And away we go. Hello. Welcome to another edition of the Sit Down on the College Football Mafia Network. I'm your host, Nathan Bomber Brown. And with me tonight, for a very first time, a premiere edition, that would be Amelia IslaNole. How we doing, Amelia?
I'm awesome. How are you?
I'm doing good. Doing good. Sounds like you got a friend in the background. Is that another one of your family?
It is. She's my youngest.
Okay. No, yeah, that's all right. It wasn't too bad. So Amelia's trying to break into this whole social, doing shows and stuff like this. And so we're going to do some mentorship for her and we're going to try to build that up. And so this is the first time she's on the air, but in the future, and I hope sooner than later, we'll have her on other shows. So welcome for being here, Amelia. Thank you very much.
Appreciate this so much. Thank you.
Absolutely, no problem. We know Jen Santee is going she's going to have surgery, and we very much have prayers out for her. It's always good to have these beautiful women from Florida State to come on our shows. We love that.
Yeah, I'm sending healing thoughts and vibes for Jen. That's intense. So I hope her the best after her surgery.
Yeah, it's too bad. Definitely, she's going to turn out okay. She's super strong,
Oh,
and just continue prayers up. Anyway, welcome everybody to the show. This is the show I just sort of decided to throw together because I've been gone for so long. Last night wasn't enough, so I appreciate everybody being here tonight. We're going to talk UConn. What the hell? Right? We're going to be talking with Mark Zanetto and trying to find out if that's a thing or if it's not a thing. What are we going to do with it? And do they get an invitation to the ACC or the Big 12? We're also going to talk a little Florida State. In fact, I think we're going to start with Florida State before we do shout outs. So, what happened on Saturday, Amelia?
on Saturday or Monday?
Oh, sorry, Monday. I apologize. It seems like so long ago. You're right. What happened Monday night?
Um, it was a clown show. It was certainly a clown show. I wasn't towards the end there. I wasn't even really sure. I wasn't even sure how to process what it was that I was watching anymore.
Right.
I see a team that isn't communicating well at all. I mean, there's a lot of talent there. I mean, you could have the best players in the world, and if they're not connected, if they don't like each other, it almost seemed like they didn't like each other out there. Like they just like they weren't having fun. There was no spirit. There was no fight. Um, and it, and I don't really know exactly where the bucket and toe of who's responsible for any of these like devastating mishaps really fall. You know, I don't think it really falls on any one person. I don't think it really falls all on DJU. I don't think
Okay.
it falls all on Mike Norvell. You know, I know that there's a lot of people with, wanting Mike Norvell's head on a stick right now, but after two losses, yes, were they bad? Were they embarrassing? Yeah, but I mean, you can't think of things that drastically right off the gate after we came off a 13-0, and what he built in 4 years, what he built to go to like an undefeated season. I mean, the man's not a bad coach by no means. So
So, I'm one of the people for 2 years have been saying that Dion's going to end up coaching in somewhere in the state of Florida this next year. He's going to leave Colorado and maybe Miami. Sorry, not Miami because they're loaded, but Florida State, definitely Florida is going to be looking for a coach. I think Napier's gone.
oh,
Um, the choice, and I put during the game, and I'm not sure if I sent you this message on Twitter or not, but it occurred to me that they paid DJU so much money to come there as a free agent. They bypassed several other options that went to other schools, Will Howard being one of them. Paid them a lot of money, at least $1 million, if not more. Do you think the pressure to to recoup some value from that NIL investment is what kept him in the game? That's the one question I have about Norvell. Why not play the backup in the fourth quarter, for instance?
I think a lot of people were asking that question. I mean, I knew like after quarter, like the first quarter, I was screaming at my team, like take him out, like
Yeah.
Brock, like, because I honestly, I liked a lot of what I saw for what little we could see of Brock. I mean, the kid definitely has passion for his team, and that's something that I'm not seeing with DJU. It doesn't seem like he's, and with Clemson, it seemed like he was more connected with like his team and camaraderie and like what he had confidence and everything else. I just did not see that at all in these last two games with him. And who knows like what had happened during the off season and training and everything else. Like but everyone else seemed to that had like the sidelines on that seemed to think that everything looked like it was living accordingly, and it looked really great. I mean, we had Saban saying he saw a top 5 roster, and even ESPN, who hates our guts, was saying that they were anticipating a top 4 playoff position, and I just that's definitely not. I mean, I don't even know if we've been knocked complete. I guess we're 21 now where we're ranked.
So you guys are 0-2 and you're still in the top 25?
No, I think that we've been completely knocked out.
Okay, yeah, that would shock me if they were 0-2 in conference and were still ranked.
Yeah, we've been completely knocked out, and deservingly so.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot. Look, I picked them to be in the top 4. I picked them to be in the playoff. I picked this team to excel. DJU has some limitations, but he played great at Oregon State last year. So, at the end of the day, let's just wrap this up by saying, is DJU the answer, or this next game, are they going to have to sit him down?
I think that they give him a shot, I guess, in the beginning, and if he starts to crap all over the place, then Mike Norvell really needs to make the tough decision to bench him and to bring in and just see what we got, because you can't let 3 games like that keep to continue without making some sort of change that might hype up the spirit of the fans, because chanting DJ sucks and we want Brock. I felt bad for DJ, and that must have been hard, hearing saying DJ sucks and we want Brock and everything else. But I think that the fan base is feeling like, oh my gosh, here we go again. This is 2021 all over again. Are we going back to the losing to J State days? Which the way that they played the last 2 games, I really don't see. The schedule's only getting harder. I don't see them a whole lot of teams with the rest of the schedule at all, unless a drastic change happens. And I just don't know if that spirit and that click is there with that team. So I would like to see them bring in Brock Len if DJU just can't get it done after the first quarter. It's just time to make a change. Just keep the spirit of the fans alive. I think they want to see it. I think a lot of people do. I don't know what that would mean for DJU. If it would, you had mentioned, DJ might quit, altogether if he gets benched, everything else. And I think that that's kind of the one of the tricky things about this new NIL situation.
Yes.
And that it's just, you don't really have a whole lot of commitment out of your commits. So
I completely agree with you. I don't know how to do the polls. I don't have Mo in here to run the ship. But I would just ask everybody in the comment section, just right now live, what do you think? Should they sit DJU or should they start him and hope for the best? I'm just curious what people think. Just really quick, a refresher. In about 10 minutes, we're going to have Mark Zanetto. I hope that's how we say his name. He's a writer and I believe Locked On UConn will be here at about 10 minutes. We're going to talk UConn. We're going to talk UConn to the Big 12. We're going to talk UConn to the ACC and UConn's horrible showing in football last week. We'll go through all that and sort of get into it. So between now and then, let's do some shout outs. First of all, I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. Again, I want to introduce Amelia IslaNole, somebody that's trying to break into the business, and I'm here to help. We're going to be doing more with her, and we really appreciate her being with us. Let's get some shout outs here at the very beginning. First of all, let's say with Alan. Alan, good to have you on the show. I'm not sure I've seen you before, but I appreciate you being here. Alan says, UConn fans have seen Lucy pull the ball away from us so many times that we're numb about realignment. We assume there's zero hope unless we see an actual press conference with an announcement. I think that is the right decision, Alan. I would not buy into any reporting that says otherwise. But thanks for being here. We appreciate it. I'll bring this comment back up when Mark is here. Timothy Green, an OG member of the house. Good to have you here, Timothy. Let's get ready for another great show. Thank you very much, Timothy, for being here. Appreciate your loyalty and everything you've done for us. Ryan Willie, who's also an OG, another member, says, "Hi, College Football Mafia family." Ryan follows that up with a $10 super chat saying, "In response to last night, Tony," and here we're talking Minnesota versus Wisconsin, "don't be throwing elbows at Wisconsin for having the guts to take on Bama. I don't see Minnesota doing that. Minnesota was the only team to lose last week in the Big Ten." Did you happen to catch that Minnesota North Carolina game?
I did not.
Okay. All right. It was, yeah, Minnesota should have won it, frankly. Not much else to talk about. Low scoring and, one of those classic beginning of the season games where everybody's a little rusty. Stormy Cyclone, another member, says, "Does your Mark, ESPN, and 6 Big 12 presidents want UConn in the Big 12?" Okay, Stormy's doing the math, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. No one else seems interested or are against it. So just to get everybody caught up, Stormy's talking about the voting, and they have to have, 75%? There's 16 teams, so they have to have 12 votes. Where are they going to get 12 votes? We'll talk about that tonight. Let's scroll down some more. Let's see here. Dallas Marquez, good to see you, Dallas. Hello from Kansas. Let's go UConn. Okay. Shout out for UConn. Appreciate you being here. Don in Kansas. Great to see you, Don. Good evening, everyone. I want to thank everybody for being here. I was gone for 2 weeks. Thanks for showing up for my silly little show on a Wednesday. I appreciate it. It's only because I think everybody knows Amelia's here. That's why they're here. I don't think it's for me. Glenn Lumen, another OG member, says, "Good morning from beautiful Philippines." Yes, we are an international show. We go around the world. We go from there to Europe and back to the United States. Thank you very much, Glenn. Games, we love games. Well, good. Lots to talk about. Illini Ted, good evening, all. Another member. Skaven, yes, checking in, saying hello, Bomber and ma'am. Wow, how do you like being called ma'am? You like that?
When you're pushing 40, it happens.
Okay. All right. That's fair enough. Stormy again says, "Bomber, you will find John Wilner article from yesterday very interesting." I replied to that. I'm looking for the link for that article, Stormy, if you have it. I might have flagged it. I'm not sure. I have another one over here by John, but maybe we'll review it in just a minute. Jan Hulk talking about going around the world. Slovenia, Jan Hulk checking in, saying hello. Good to see you, Jan. I hope you're feeling good. Getting better from that surgery a long time ago. Dallas Marquez says, "Sit him if he starts struggling." Okay.
That's what I said. Yeah.
I think it's a reasonable thing. OPD Don, another member, saying, "Start him." All right. Jeff Woodworth checking in, saying, "Howdy, fellas. Good to see y'all again." One fella. Let's just be very clear. There's not two fellas here. Illini Ted follows up and says, "With NLI, there's a tightrope to walk with guys that are brought in because if they get benched, teams will use that against you in future recruiting." Illini Ted, I believe, and somebody can correct me in chat, they're going to get rid of the NLIs. Did you read that? Am I making that up? Did you see that in the news, Amelia?
I did not.
Okay. Illini Ted, you can check me. There was an article. I don't have it flagged for tonight because I wasn't going to cover it, but I think they're proposing getting rid of the national letters of intent completely.
Okay.
So how do you think that affects recruiting? You don't have to sign anything anymore. Pretty much recruiting, you can go wherever you want.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like the willy-nilly way about it is very smart. Where do they draw the line? Like if anyone gets their feelings hurt, then they can just dip out anytime they want.
Well, I think so. This is where the NIL matters. I think they're going to have to start writing contracts, and I need to get a lawyer on to talk about the NIL a little bit more. But make those commitments actually to be at the school. So you can't get any money or a very limited amount of the money that's NIL if you leave the school, right? The contracts have to basically be terminable. And I don't know. It's still a Wild West at this point.
I know. That makes so much sense. And I don't understand why there weren't like any boundaries at all, like really set up when all this came to fruition. You know, it just seems.
Yeah. Well, the NCAA just continues to spin out of control. They're losing control left and right. Ricky Tungate, good to have you here, Ricky. Good to see you. And members giving a membership away. Gifted one College Football Mafia membership. Thank you very much, Ricky. I'm going to clap for you. Appreciate your membership and giving it up to other people. Let's see who got that. Darren Thornton received that gift. So, Darren, make sure you thank Ricky for that free gift. And then Darren and anybody else, I would recommend you guys paying it forward, giving other people memberships. Not only is it good luck, I believe in karma personally, but it helps build the organization, right? A little bit later in the show, I'll bring up the main page and you guys can see all the benefits that members get. There's a lot of content that we've created for members. And I guarantee you'll be the smartest guy at the water cooler the next day. Yeah, I put our content up against anybody in our recording. So thank you very much, Ricky, your membership and your loyalty. We really, really appreciate it. Bob Swanger, another member, says, hello, everyone. Good to have you. Let's see here. Steve Ohio, Florida, checking in, saying UConn to the Big 12 comes down to your mark and Endeavor lobbyists to get 12 yes votes. So don't say anything, Amelia. I'm going to ask you at the end because I'm going to ask Mark to convince you that UConn should be in the Big 12.
Okay.
Okay. You're like unadulterated. You don't have a dog in the fight. I'm a Big 12 guy. So we'll see what he says and see if that's something that checks in with you. Let's see here. Stephen Vitt says, hey guys, how you doing? Good to see you, Stephen. Illini Ted checking in. Sorry, I meant NIL. Okay, yeah, there is a difference. Yeah, it is a difference there. Stormy Cyclone, a $5 super chat. Thank you so much, Stormy. These things all seem to be entangled and being negotiated that I have listed. You're exactly right. They are entangled. Yep, you're exactly right. Illini Ted again says NLI. I heard they're going to allow to sign at any time for what it's worth. Okay, so to me that's like get rid of it, but yeah, I might have interpreted that wrong. Let's see here. Jeff Woodward, DJ should have stayed a Beeve. Yeah, Oregon State. Are you regretting that pickup? He certainly struggled throwing the ball.
Like regretting bringing him on.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know if I don't really know if it came down to much of a choice. I mean, I think that they thought they were doing the right thing, bringing on what, not the perfect quarterback, but, from his past, like a stronger quarterback. I think that, maybe if they kept Tate Rodemaker and, he had every reason to be, upset, that he had been with them for as long as he had. And, he wasn't given like a starting position. So, I think that I think that we're seeing some repercussions of bringing him on in the first place for sure. And spending a lot of money on him as well, for not much performance. So hopefully he turns it around. Hopefully, something clicks and he turns it around. We got a bye week. So they got some time to kind of maybe get it together in the next couple of weeks before we face Memphis, which always tastes blood, because of Norvell. So that would be a hard loss if we lose to Memphis for sure.
I can't even imagine what will happen in Tallahassee if you guys lose to them.
Oh, the team will be on, the city will be on fire.
I just don't even know what would happen. Pull out the National Guard, maybe.
Yeah.
What's sad is I love Florida State too. Let's see here. Clint Moses checking in. He is an Oregon State Beaver. He says Beavs don't want DJU coming back. Okay. I've heard most people from Oregon State, though, say nice things about DJU.
Yeah.
Clint, do you disagree with that? On Twitter, I've seen a bunch of people say, no, we loved him, I guess we'll see. Antoine Codes checking in says Norvell made a mistake with DJU. All right. There you go. And there he is, the man, the machine. I'm going to post this over so everybody knows he's on with us right now. Mark Zanetto, how are we doing, man?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Doing good. I want to introduce Amelia IslaNole. She's breaking into this social media stuff.
Okay, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
So, Mark, everybody's been waiting for you, man. People have been sending me messages saying, when are you going to have him on? So catch everybody up on the current status. We'll talk about the historical stuff in a minute. But where are we at this minute with UConn going to a P4 conference?
Yeah, it's pretty stagnant. I made one of the biggest mistakes using the word imminent and not following through on it with the source that gave me this story worked on this for quite a while. There was many outlets that went through this. He came to me and said, I know this is going to happen. I know this is going to go down, and they feel like it's going to happen. That's going to happen within 2 weeks. And I said, are you sure? Like, this is like an imminent thing? And he said, yes. So I don't think that UConn as a whole, the administration, anyway, all the teams that were for this started to realize what we're starting to realize now, that there are quite a few teams. I don't know the specifics. I thought it might be fun to guess which teams are against this tonight, if you guys are up for that.
That's what we're doing. Yeah, we're going to do that.
So essentially right now where it stands is there are 8 to potentially 10 definite yeses.
Okay.
They're not going to vote unless they get to 12. Like, they're just not going to do it. It's just not something they'll end up doing. So it's still kind of up in the air, like a 50-50 opportunity for UConn to get an invite to the Big 12. I have my suspicions. I don't have any concrete evidence. I don't have a source telling me this team is absolutely railroading UConn, but I have 2 very likely, in my opinion, that are doing this. You're not one of them. BYU is not one of them. I for sure do not think BYU cares one way or the other, but I think UCF and I think Cincinnati 100% do.
They're for it or against it?
Against.
Okay.
Totally against. UCF, I am almost positive that they want to see UConn die on the vine. Like, they don't want to see UConn come anything close to a P4, P3 conference, because, UConn's departure from the AAC was very bittersweet for a lot of these teams. They felt like they were all kind of at the minute. Just even that, the reason why I even bring up Cincinnati is because what Cincinnati was able to do in the AAC, getting themselves into a 4-team playoff, right, and kind of building up a football team in that realm. I think UCF has a big chip on their shoulder. They had that 13-0 season where they hung a national championship banner. They think really highly of themselves in football, probably the way our fans feel about basketball.
Sure.
And, I really don't, I think they don't want to help in that regard. I think if UConn stays in football anonymity, the 2 of those schools will be happy, quite frankly.
Okay, so let's work backwards. If you say you think there's roughly 8, which would be half, I'm just going to take most of the middle part of the Big 12. I don't think really cares. They're already flying east. My concerns would be Utah, Arizona State, and then I still have questions about Texas Tech as well. Are any of those outliers that you really can point to, or are they some that people aren't even questioning?
Yeah, I think the 4 newbies, right? The Pac-12 gang, are probably. I don't think any of them are vehemently against it, but I definitely think that they're probably going, well, as long as we don't have our revenue diluted in any way.
Yes.
I think that would be a net positive for them, because if you look at Arizona State, Colorado, whom I missed, Utah, they typically have good basketball programs too. And UConn's basketball program in men's and women's, is the crown jewel of this deal.
Yeah.
Especially if Yormark decides to do separate deals on the football and basketball side.
Right.
And if he decides to go down a route where, I hope they don't do this, but, private equity gets involved to infuse cash. If that's something that he thinks is, important to the lifeblood of the Big 12, then I think, I think the thing that is frustrating on the UConn side is the overtures have been made to them. Do they want to join? Absolutely. I think what they don't want to see happen, and where I think some fans are frustrated, even with me to an extent, where they're like, well, you told us this was going to happen and now it's kind of stalled.
Right.
Is that, they don't want to look embarrassed, right? They don't want to look like, hey, this was about to go down and then it's kind of at the doorstep and we're not getting the votes we thought we had.
Well, the timing was sure iffy on the announcements, right? I'm sure the information you were given, and you and I immediately that day started trading messages because
Sure.
I was trying to get caught up, and you were breaking something that we've been talking about for months. In fact, over a year we've been talking about UConn potentially going to the Big 12. I mean, Ute did a video of Syracuse and UConn and how valuable their brands are, especially the basketball brand at UConn, and how it by itself, on top of the markets, puts UConn very high on the value list, which is what Yormark's been saying since he got there.
Sure.
The problem is separating out the football. And if you can do that, then I think the deal is pretty simple. It seems pretty straightforward. The value in basketball is huge. It's enormous. It would give a runway for football, which I think Bob Thompson, I have his quote, he said was about 2030, 2031. So the next media deal, they would bring, potentially bring them in. Is that kind of what you're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the plan. I think the idea of UConn football having this much runway, it's been done before here. I think that's the thing that people don't understand. Or if they look at UConn, everyone's so like caught up in what they see, especially what you just saw on Saturday with them just being not competitive against a Big Ten school.
Yeah, I didn't want to talk about that at all.
No, I mean, I will, because I've been talking about it on my show and how it's really disappointing. Like,
right.
The amount of, if you think about a couple of things, I'll break it down like this. The NIL aspect that UConn has been able to raise in the independent world or the group of five world, it puts us in the top 20 in terms of the amount of money that we've invested in the NIL. Right. It didn't show on the field clearly, but we're making those investments and getting the collectives involved, getting donors involved, even fans. Like, fans donate to essentially a place called Store Central where they can get a bunch of news that's not affiliated with Locked On, but still they're great people. And I love I'm a member of Store Central because it's just a good place for UConn fans to commiserate outside of Twitter and other places and other shows. And it is truly a unique situation where it's like, listen, we may not have the big money donors right now, or maybe they're few and far between, but we're raising money constantly for the NIL athletics, and big part of that is football, right? So that's the first thing. The NIL investments are there. The fan base is energized, not only from the men's and women's basketball, but for a competitive football team. Then the second thing is UConn has to remember, and fans have to remember, if you're not a UConn football aficionado, this team was in a Fiesta Bowl in 2010. It's not that long ago. It's really not that long ago. They lost to Oklahoma in the Fiesta Bowl with Randy Edsall, and then he left for Maryland. So it's one of those things where it can be done there in the heyday of the Big East, with a conference that is football centric, because the Big East used to be both. It didn't used to be basketball only. Yeah, I think some of younger fans don't even realize that. So I think that's the biggest thing with this, is that if UConn can put themselves back into a true power conference, not the AAC, which was masquerading as kind of a in-betweener.
It was a quasi. That's how we sold it. Yeah.
It's a great way to put it. If they can truly get back to that Power 4, end up being a Power 3 conference in the Big 12. And then also, I've heard this too, and I know this is a Big 12 show, but that is more likely that they're going to go to the Big 12 or a reimagined ACC. They are not going to stay an independent and in the Big East for basketball. This is going to happen one way or the other. So if the Big 12 truly wants to make this happen, UConn is ready to go.
So Amelia is a Florida State fan.
Okay.
I'll give her a second to ask you a question in a minute, but I told her the challenge tonight was going to be, she has no rooting interest in this, right? What's your sales pitch if you're trying to prove why UConn deserves to be up in a power conference again?
Are you asking me or Amelia?
I'm asking you. Sell it to her.
Oh, I'm not going to be a jerk about it, but you can see these banners behind you, right?
I can see them. Yeah, we can see them.
Okay. I wasn't going to be a jerk and be like, can you count the amount of banners back here? So
I know how many championships you got. I know it.
There's 6 back there.
Yes.
I don't have enough room in this house to put the 11 women's championships in up on that. The fact that we've done it we've been to a BCS game, if you will, like an Orange Bowl or Fiesta Bowl, probably more than a Vanderbilt, more than a Kentucky. Some of these big time SEC schools that kind of like to talk about how great their football teams are, but they're terrible. Right. So, it's one of those things where it's been done before in football. You have the greatest women's basketball program ever coming to the Big 12, and then the best basketball program currently in the country over the last 30 years. So those are the pitches. And the market value for that is primetime games. Do you want to see Arizona State in UConn with Bobby Hurley, Danny Hurley going at it on Fox or ESPN, or who televises it? The Hurley Bowl once or twice a year.
That's right.
Do you want to see big time conference games home at home with Kansas, Fog Allen at Gampel Pavilion? The amount of hype that would come with a game against Kelvin Sampson in Houston. There's so many storylines within just the basketball. And then that's the beginning. Then as UConn starts to ramp up their football, I mean, let's face it, guys, I'm looking at the Big 12 roster. Has Iowa State always been good at football? No. Has Kansas always been in the AP top 25? Absolutely not. Houston got destroyed by UNLV. Yep. So it's I won't bring up Florida State, Amelia. We know there's some trouble there. So I mean, like there are always going to be challenges with your programs, and unfortunately for UConn, their football program has had a terrible run over the last 5 of the last 6 years. But got some people in place to fix it. Hopefully, we're in the right spot. That's my pitch. You already have the best basketball, and our athletic department's pretty damn good. The UConn men in for baseball was just in super regionals. Our field hockey team won a national championship. Soccer's in the Final Four constantly. I mean, probably we'd be the number 2 in terms of academics, in terms of Big 12, automatically jumped in. So it's a total package.
Okay, Amelia, how did he do?
He did awesome. I totally get all of the points that he made for sure. I guess you sank in with me a lot with what his perspective on everything on the last show that you guys did about this situation. Like I said, I had to brush up on my UConn because I don't.
That's okay. That's all right.
But I found it interesting that they brought in, the football team brought in like $6 million in revenue, and brought $14 million deficit. Right. And, you got Big 12 schools that are, upwards of, 75, 80, maybe $100 million in revenue. It's just like, it seems an awfully big gap. Do you think that they'd be able to, bring that team up to that kind of revenue par with the rest of the schools to be like an equal contender as far as that's concerned? I'm not sure how they break out all of their payments amongst the schools, but would it be like an automatic equal payment if they went into the Big 12 amongst all of the schools without having a football team that really has not had the opportunity to really build themselves up to the revenue that the other teams make? Or
that's a great question.
So for my understanding of the deal is, if let's say they announce tomorrow and we're right about it being 2030, 2031, something like that. So UConn has 6 to 7 years to make investments to get them to where the Big 12 feels comfortable being like, okay, you're an equal partner in the football by the time our new media rights deal comes out. Right. I think the goal really truly is, and I'm going to use a team's, and I have no interest in how good a football program they are, but they're an average ACC school. NC State is usually in the top 25, top 30. I think their revenue is in the $30 or $40 million. I think UConn would sign on for that right now. If in 6 or 7 years, the investment level is where they are on par with a mid-level Big 12, mid-level ACC school, and their program is getting to the point where they're getting the recruits they want, they're getting 3, 4, potentially maybe a 5-star, be still my heart, to come to UConn.
Yeah, good luck. Those are hard.
That's where they are going to really shoot for. Are they going to be like, hey, we're going to compete with Texas Tech and Baylor in football as far as revenue right now? Absolutely not. I think Kansas is somewhere in the $35 to $40 million range in revenue if you look at some numbers. So I think that would be the model, because to be honest, if I was to say to you, is Kansas a football school, you'd say absolutely not. So they're just not. Like, so when it comes to UConn, I'm not going to ever pretend that UConn's a football school, but can they get to that point where they're revenue relevant with a Kansas, with an NC State, with a Duke? Then 100%.
Do you think that's detrimental to their basketball program?
No.
Shift a lot of focus to the football program?
No, I don't think so, because right now, I think it's a great question too, by the way, because I feel like that's a big worry for a lot of fans, and they're like, why do we even care? Like, why do we even care about the football program? Our basketball program is, what we're known for. We should either relegate football to an FCS or just get rid of it. Like, I mean, there's definitely there's probably about 40% of the fan base that is like done with it, like they're just over it. But I don't think what they're seeing is the big picture. There's always going to be something down the line that is going to affect the basketball team. It happened to them when the Big East disbanded and ACC came and poached a bunch of our schools.
Yep.
And we were sitting there going, well, what do we do? And then we had to go to the AAC. We didn't want to. Do you think anyone wanted to go to the American Athletic Conference? It didn't exist. It was just a brand new thing. And it was a bunch of hodgepodge schools. You're going to Tulsa on a Tuesday to play a game. And it's just like, there's no regional rivalries. So if we're going into this world of there's absolutely no such thing as truly like a regional rivalry anymore, and it's all about the revenue that you can create, you don't want to be left without your chair when the music stops. Like, it's just, that's all this is. It is protection of the program as a whole. And I've said this a few times, because everyone loves Dan Hurley here. They love Gino Auriemma. These guys aren't young guys, especially Gino. Gino's like 80. He's this is his last contract. I mean, he's the greatest women's basketball coach maybe of all time. People in Tennessee might have
I was going to say Tennessee.
Yeah. But it's pretty damn close. So I would say that you just have to, we have to see the forest past the trees. It's one of those things where these guys aren't going to be here forever. And if you want to protect the programs that you love, you have to have some football revenue, something that is tangible, or else you could be relegated. I mean, I fear that we're going to get into a world where it's the haves and have-nots, and there's going to be like separate levels of championships.
Yeah, it's not a fear, it's a fact, Mark.
Yeah,
that's happening right now.
So I think that's the biggest thing. And I think now, especially in college football, when you look at the landscape, there are a lot of FCS schools and lower level Division I schools who aren't in Power 4 conferences that were super competitive over the weekend.
Sure.
Transfer portal, NIL.
Boise State's a fine example of that.
North Dakota State.
Well, they're an FCS school, so
I know. I'm saying, like, but the whole point is, like, you can 100% make this happen. And UConn UConn, if you've been to UConn, I know you probably haven't, but Rensselaer Field, the rent is a 40,000 seat arena. That thing it's not old. It's got the facilities. They have wonderful practice facilities. They have what they need to compete. We're not sitting here going, oh, it rained today, we can't practice. Like, this is not who UConn is. Like, they have indoor facilities. They have all the physio that's needed. They have the NIL. So it 100% should happen.
Everything you're describing, you basically took that phrase out of Brett Yormark's head. He's the visionary, right? He came to the Big 12 reimagining everything to do with the conference. His idea to separate, bifurcate football from basketball. His idea to bring in schools that maybe other people, thought were a reach, right? This is his visionary thing, and he's trying to sell it. Who cares what the votes are? Eventually, whatever happens is going to happen. But I think this is the biggest barrier. And I have an article from Bob I was going to bring up, but we'll just talk about it now and put it on the table. Fox is the biggest guy at this table right now. Fox just signed up with the Big East basketball contract, and they invested heavily in that. And some have even said they overpaid just because of UConn status. Fox is also a partner with the Big 12.
Yep.
Word is Bob Thompson took this to Fox and it pissed them off, right? They're like, slow down. You move too fast, right? If we move you to the Big 12, now all of a sudden, what's this contract work at the Big East level? So you're now at the table at Fox Sports, and you need to somehow rectify this situation. How does this get fixed? Because in my opinion, if Fox hadn't have come in, I think the whole reason the thing fell apart, the vote that you were told, I think it would have been done. We would already have. I think this was already in the door. I think UConn, as you said, was right around the corner. They were going to be walking in. Hey, how you doing? 6 years, we'll play football. I think Fox is the reason that we had problems. So how do you rectify that problem, Mark?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is our old bedfellow that we don't get on TV enough with is ESPN, and ESPN has talked about how they are trying to figure out a way to kind of they're for this, obviously, because they're against
for sure.
Fox, but how much are they for it? Because money talks, and we know what walks, right? So it's one of those things where I think you're right. Just looking at the agreement that they have with the Big East, and it's to span Fox, FS1, FS2. It's going to be streaming on NBC and Peacock, TNT.
Yep.
I know it's on Max, True TV, all this stuff. So it's a huge deal, but it sounds great. But then when you break it down from a money perspective, the amount of money that each team sees is like $7 million a year.
Yes.
So it's not the football money that guys are, $60, $70 million, $30 million, whatever the astronomical numbers football teams are getting for these media rights deals. That's the biggest issue. And I think once these numbers truly came out, I really do think that UConn officials were like, man, that's all we're getting out of this. After all of that, after all of these, dotting the T's and crossing the I's, we're
got
only
back-to-back championships.
Yep.
Right?
We just won back-to-back championships, and we couldn't even get double-digit $1 million. We couldn't even get $10 million.
Yep.
So, they had to they literally just put in a new scoreboard in Gamble. They had to re-up Dan Hurley. Life's expensive when you're winning a lot, and to keep. I mean, it's expensive to keep the staff. I mean, I can't imagine that Luke Murray and Kamani Young are making anything less than $1 million each.
Yes.
So these guys, the entire staff is paid like a professional basketball team.
Yes.
So it's one of those things where you look at this, and I think if ESPN doesn't step up, we're going to be sitting at a stalemate for a little while. Unless one of these schools that is, I wouldn't say staunchly against, like we talked about, whether that's UFC or Cincinnati, I really do think there's about 6 teams, maybe 4 teams that can be swayed. What that will look like, how long that will take is another story.
6 years isn't a long runway. At the end of the day, as long as you set your goals, though, you can get there. You can build a stadium in 2 years from ground up.
Yep.
You could absolutely you'll get a team in there that can compete. And who cares on any given Saturday, right? I don't care what the score was. It was embarrassing. It couldn't have been worse timing for UConn because of everything else that was going on. But at the end of the day, that's a very minuscule event when you take it and compare it to everything else, I think. And I'm just going to say it again. You did this analysis last year. He did this analysis and said, which school is better for the Big 12, Syracuse or UConn? And by far and away, I don't know if you've seen that video.
Yep.
I would recommend you watch it. I'll try to see if I can get it to you. You can watch it direct if you're not a member. But the gist of it is UConn was extremely high on the value scale, and it's because of brand. Kansas is very high on that scale. It's because of brand. It's not because their football or basketball teams are great. It's the brand that puts people in the butts in the seat, sorry. And that's where we're at right now. That's what's pushing TV dollars through the roof. That it's all eyeballs, it's all presence. And we've been sort of sold on UConn here for a while. I tried lobbying for him last summer as an alternate if the Four Corners didn't come with the Pac-12. Now that that's done, this is how I would picture it. If UConn comes in now, then you could immediately peg out 4 to 6 schools from the ACC when that sort of happens.
Mm-hmm.
And now you get to a a 20 to 22 team league, and the money is going to take care of everybody at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great way to look at it. I've seen some fans and some people send me some stuff when all this broke, of having 24 teams and having 12, like a 12 team West, 12 team East, Big 12
Yes, that's right.
conference, where it's essentially Big 12 times 2, whatever you want, Big 12 2. You know what I mean? Like whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
The branding rights alone are great right there. So it's like, I think that is a possibility, because then you start to solve some of the travel issues. You start to solve some of the because I think the biggest fear that UConn fans are having, and I keep bringing this up, is I said this to a friend of mine who is a Houston fan. The Big 12 basketball conference was a great conference last year. There's no doubt about it.
Yep.
But I feel like a lot of the reason why you didn't have guys standing at the end of the year is because you just beat the hell out of each other for 20 games in conference. By the time the tournament comes, you're just worn out. So while the Big East is definitely challenging and is I feel like a top 3 conference in college basketball, you get a couple of breaks. You get to play DePaul, you get to play Georgetown. You don't really get a lot of that in the Big 12, and I know that's blasphemy from a Big East basketball fan. I think the reality is that's the truth. I mean, I remember watching games where I was just like, this is the easy win. Like, this isn't challenging. And that's a scary thing to a UConn fan that's used to winning championships, is that, are they going to beat themselves up too much in conference where they get to the NCAA tournament and crap out because they're tired? I mean, I feel like that's a big fear.
It's a real fear. What happens if it comes true?
I think if it comes true, then you're going to have to. I think what our coaching staff has really shown is an adaptability to the times, and I think you're going to see, like, I hate people are going to hate it, but I think you're going to see some load management stuff.
Just like the NBA.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you especially with the travel, if you're in the Big 12 now, and I'm in Storrs, Connecticut, and I got to travel all the way to Colorado, or I got to travel to Utah and change time zones on like a Tuesday or a Wednesday, and I got to fly back and play on Saturday. And it's a game that we feel comfortable with. Maybe they only play, a certain player 10 minutes that game because they're just trying to save them for the Big 12 tournament. A lot of that's 100% the type of stuff are going to happen, or they're going to adapt to rotations. A lot of coaches, and Dan Hurley included, want to play 7, 8 guys on a regular basis. Now those rosters maybe expand.
I think rosters will eventually expand with NIL money and stuff. I think they do.
Yeah, so I think that's a possibility in the future, but I think in the interim, they're going to have to manage their players a lot better and a lot with a lot more careful, with more of a discerning eye. And to Jeff, I agree with you. Iron sharpens iron. But what happens if you're sharpening iron and you cut off one of your fingers? It's like what's the nose? We cut off our nose to spite our face. Like sometimes, work hard, smarter, not harder. That's the key to this. Like, and I think that is, I think there's a lot of, think of us, we're all in our own homes, correct?
Yep.
Right. 10 years ago, we couldn't do this. Why? No. Because we didn't have studios. We didn't have the ability to do that. So times change. You got to adapt with the times.
Completely agree. Amelia, do you have a question before we start wrapping this up?
No, I've just been trying to soak it all in, like I said.
Okay.
I want to ask Amelia a question.
Go ahead.
Amelia, I got to ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
What are you thinking right now with Florida State? Like, I haven't talked to too many Florida State fans, so I'm curious from your perspective. What's the frustration? Like, what do you want to see change?
There's a lot to unpack there. It's kind of unbelievable to see this big of a drop off from where we were at, and I think that there's a lot of disconnect. There's not a lot of fire. There's not a lot of fight for some reason amongst these players. I mean, the talent's there. It just doesn't seem like they care all that much. And I don't know really where that's coming from exactly. Florida State's been pretty well known to, from our Bobby Bowden days. And I think Mike Norvell has a lot of those traits of Bobby Bowden of really bringing a team together as a family. And like, I'm just not seeing that at all right now with what we have going at all. Like it almost seems like they don't like each other, like,
It's possible.
So, I don't think like, a big, coaching session, change to happen right out the gate, especially with Mike Norvell. I know a lot of people like have his head on a stick right now, but I think that's a little extreme. But I do think we were talking about, should DJU start in this next game against Memphis and just see how he does. And, I think, giving him a chance, in the first quarter, but if he starts to crap all over the place like he has been, then I really think that, it's time to, he just has to be a big boy and, like let Brock Len play, to see.
I gotcha.
Talents out there.
Okay. I just had a couple more questions. First of all, thanks for being
Please.
here. Why don't you tell everybody who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure. See my name out there, Mark Zanetto. I am one of the few hosts. Actually, I think there's like 3 or 4 at Locked On. I don't actually live in Connecticut anymore. I moved away from Connecticut 15 years ago. Geez, time flies. In 2010, the last time UConn, maybe I should move back. That's the last time UConn was in a big bowl game. I moved down to North Carolina. So I am not a quote unquote local host, but I have big time roots in the state of Connecticut. It's my hometown. I enrolled at UConn. I ended up being a professional tennis player. I was going to play tennis for UConn, and the coach at the time left. And so I went to play at a different university in Connecticut. And so it's probably one of the bigger regrets of my life that I didn't actually graduate from the University of Connecticut, but it was, I was all set to go and don my Husky uniform and didn't end up doing that. But I started with Locked On just a few months ago. I've yet to reside a UConn men's basketball loss.
There you go.
So I took over. They didn't have a Locked On UConn show. I inquired about it, sent a demo, and I got the opportunity to start the show literally right after the Creighton game, where they lost by about 18 points, and then they won 13 straight, and that's my claim to fame. We're the fastest growing show on the network. I owe that a lot to the success of the programs, because we've been doing some of the women's stuff as well. We're starting a women's basketball show probably after the birth of my daughter. She's going to be born here in the next couple of weeks.
Congratulations.
So I'm not going to start another 20 to 30 minute podcast every day until I can get her squared away. So probably more like October, closer to the women's basketball season. And our YouTube channel is Locked On UConn. If you guys are interested to go over and subscribe to it, would really appreciate it. And my handle's there on X at Mark Zanetto CBB, and then you can also check me out at Locked On UConn. I typically tweet and send things under my main name here, but we do have a Locked On UConn page that's growing as we speak.
Did you say you were in North Carolina?
I am.
What part?
Right in the center, Greensboro.
Okay, I live in Charlotte.
Okay. Yep. There you go. Let's have a football party. UConn, Florida State at Bank of America. Let's make that happen.
Get on that right away.
Yep.
I'm going to ask you a selfish question. So,
sure.
What do you think about what's going on in Provo at BYU?
Be more specific.
They hired Kevin Young from the Suns, the lead assistant coach. He was set to be the next coach at the Brooklyn, whatever they are now, team, and then he decided to come to BYU, paying $5 million a year. They have the third largest NIL in basketball right now, and they're paying for players left and right. We're talking millions of dollars. I think it's coming from a booster group led by the owner of the Jazz.
Okay.
So if your answer right there gave it to me. You haven't seen them. You haven't been tracking them. I'm just curious if you've heard about some of these schools out west that maybe are trying to catch you guys.
I mean, honestly, I sound like a really arrogant Husky fan, and that's our roots, right? Let's go.
Of
Bring
course.
it on.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah.
I honestly, I love it. I want more of it. Like, I would love to see an NCAA tournament game where we don't win by more than 13 points.
So
that hasn't happened in 2 years. So, so I kid. Like, honestly, I think the overall game of basketball in college this is the name of the game now. And I think if BYU can do it and they can pay players, what happens when the prices start going up? Then the haves and the have-nots it's going to become even a wider gap. And if BYU can continue to, put money in their war chest, then I'm all for it. I think that's what makes some of the stuff that I feel like Gan Hurley and UConn are doing, where their NIL is robust, but it's not probably BYU level. It's probably not Kentucky level, but yet we're still finding ways to figure out how to win. And it just goes to show, I think, Nick Saban, I won't say his entire quote because I'm not allowed to swear on my show, and I don't think you want me to do it on here.
Too. Go ahead and say it.
But he said, you could have a $20 million roster and if these guys aren't the right guys, you're shit out of luck. So it's one of those things where it doesn't, it matters, but it doesn't. It's kind of like, we've kind of figured some stuff out around here where it's, you recruit 3 or 4 guys, 3 4 stars, maybe 1 5-star, and then you mix in the veterans, get a transfer or 2. And that's been the formula over the last 3 or 4 years. And it's worked pretty well. I'm really surprised that people haven't started to kind of copy the formula. Yes. They're still thinking that the old Duke way of thinking, Kentucky way of thinking of these super classes is really the way to go. And I think that that's very misguided. You don't win in March with a bunch of freshmen. You win with guys who have been there before. So that's what I would say.
NIL's changing the game. People are playing in the league longer. They're staying in college longer because they can get paid instead of going and possibly not getting drafted, and going to that draft early. It's completely changed everything. So
it's good money if you can get it, man. If that's your gig, then
I
awesome.
think they're so overpaid. Anyway, Mark, I appreciate you coming on. Is there any questions you have for me?
What do you? Okay, I have one question. Forget about the folks that I mentioned, like the UCFs and the Cincinnati.
Right.
If you polled each Big 12 school right now, do you think UConn has the 12 votes?
Right.
Like just the fans.
I think right this second, the concern is that there's not a bifurcation and those two things don't separate. Basketball and football, it's all together. And if UConn comes in right now in 2026, how good can they possibly be? On the flip side, if they can work it out so those two things can be separated, and then whatever you guys need to do for goals to get where you need to be in 2030, 31, which is again what Bob Thompson has suggested. In my opinion, then I think it's a path for success. The money's there. You worked it out. And I think it's something between $1.5 and $3 million each school would get additional if they brought in UConn and UConn continued to win at the rate they did. That includes their championship credits and all that fun stuff. So the money's there. The brand value is enormous. And I think you'll eventually get there. In fact, I really believe this. I believe that what you reported that I started tracking that day, 3 days later, if that report about the visit hadn't gone to the public, the visit that you guys came to Dallas and went back, if that had stayed hidden, I think we would be talking about UConn to the Big 12 in 2026. So Fox, you guys just need to unwind the Fox from the Big East and make them happy. Because the one thing Big 12 doesn't want to do as a football conference, they want to be a football conference. They want to be P3. They want to pick up schools from the ACC and then leave them behind. To do that, the football money has to be there. Success has to be there. People have to get to the playoffs. 80-20 basketball, football is still a lot of money. As long as that doesn't bring that value down and everybody holds their same value, you said at the beginning they don't lose any money per school, then I think they get there.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's what's happening. I really do. I think we'll find out. I maybe sooner than later.
Right.
But we could be sitting here, you could be texting me this time next year being like, hey dude, what's the scoop?
Right. Yeah. That's probably what
I mean, I think especially now with the timing, it'll probably end up being a next year thing. Also, I think they probably want to sit back and watch to see if UConn can actually be competitive in football this year.
It's asking a lot.
Possible.
I think it's asking a lot to do it just 1 year off.
I know, but I just as like a perception. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Look, UConn has I think 4 more games against what I would consider name brands.
Okay.
Duke, Wake Forest, Syracuse. I'm missing one.
Boston College.
I think Boston College. Yep. So if of those 4 games, if they somehow can upset one of those teams, if they can be competitive in those 4 games and win against the teams that they're supposed to win against,
right,
get a bowl game, then it's look, we're already kind of trending up. Like that's the biggest thing. Even if it's a tick below that and they rebound from this Maryland debacle,
yeah,
we're 6 years away from what it would look like. And as long as you see that needle start going towards this way, then I think we're in better shape.
Well, I think you got. Sorry, go ahead and finish.
No, go ahead. No, I think it's a fair ask on the Big 12, to be honest with you, because that's all the fans are asking for is competitive
perception.
Football.
Yeah, that's right.
So
I would go ahead, Amelia. Go ahead.
So do you see, for both of you, do you see the possible cons for the Big 12 if this was to happen? Like all of a sudden you play a football team, strength of schedule, that sort of thing. Where are your points on that possibly?
Go ahead, Mark. You answer first.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry so much about strength of schedule because by the time all of this goes down, this league may end up being 22, 24 deep.
Yeah.
And if you have 1 or 4 weak links, it's not going to hurt, because you're not going to play. If you have 24 teams in a league, you're not going to play everyone every year anyway.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things where, I don't see that being a big deterrent. Especially again, if we look at Big 12 ACC, the SEC has been dragging Vanderbilt's corpse throughout their entire life.
Yeah.
And Kentucky hasn't always been knocking on the door for big time games. Kentucky's had an awful football team for almost the entirety of their program. So we can name schools. I mean, Virginia Tech looked terrible, lost to Vanderbilt. So I mean, like each school has some success, but they also have had some really bad years in football. UConn's just in a bad cycle right now and needs to get out of it.
Yeah, I would say the Big 12 definitely is fighting that perception issue. And if they just see a turnaround of some sort, life out of the program, I think that would really help from a perception standpoint. But in my opinion, Yormark's setting the vision. He's projected that to the chancellors and presidents and said, look, don't worry about today. Let's think 6 years down the road. And just let's put them on a trial, get them in 30-31. They meet some markers. The stadium, do you think that's going to be a problem? A lot of complaints. You guys are a half hour from your stadium.
No, because I think it's a good, it's right near the airport. There's hotels. Like it's a good spot for people to kind of come. If you're from BYU, you're coming in from Provo, you're flying in from Colorado. It's a good stadium.
Okay.
All I would say is for everyone that is like, the stadium and the fans, like we looked at some of the attendance rankings of Big 12 and ACC schools.
Yeah.
We would rival the middle to bottom tier of the Big 12 and ACC in terms of attendance rankings. So that's not what I'm worried about. Also, if you watch that Maryland game, that's an 80,000 seat stadium. There was 20,000 people there. So
yeah,
we're not the only ones struggling.
Yeah.
I wouldn't worry about it. All this talk of, building a stadium on campus, I think it's unnecessary. If UConn starts to be what I think the administration wants them to be in 10 years, sure, let's do it because the money will be there.
I think it's very fair. Thank you so much for coming on, Mark. We got so much more we could talk about, but you have a life I'm going to let you go to. Thanks for joining us tonight. And I'm just going to offer to you, if you ever need anything from me, you need some assistance or an outside viewpoint for what you guys are doing, I'm certainly willing to help.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you so much.
You bet. Have a great night. We'll see you later.
Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye. I'm going to clap him out. That was fantastic. Holy cow. So many comments. We couldn't get to the comments. I just was enraptured by all the stuff he was telling us there. That
Yeah.
Interrupting him for comments and questions, I just didn't see was really important at the time. Obviously, people can go back and digest that stuff by watching the video later. But do you have one big takeaway from all that?
I guess I still see a lot of the cons for this to happen. But I mean, he did make a lot of good points that make it make sense, at the same time. I think that I need to do more research on the ins and outs of it all to really have like my own opinion on it.
I think that's fair. Yeah, well, there's no reason to get into something if you're not 100% informed. That's definitely where you want to be. You want to be, I need to know more, right? So I think that's great opinion. My one takeaway from it would be, one, I think something almost happened. I have enough quotes, and there was no reason to go through all of them, but I have 5 different reports from national writers, right? ESPN, AP, world news, that said UConn to the Big 12, very, very close, right? And this is my opinion, my assessment of everything I'm seeing. I really think that Mark's original reporting, I think he was the first one out the gate with a national report that it could be happening in a couple weeks, was absolutely true. And probably what happened is when it leaked, for one thing, you never want leaks because then everybody's eyes get in it that you don't care about until it's something like that's over. And then Fox has this challenge with this current Big East deal. They lose UConn. Sure, they can backfill, but that's like the West Coast Conference losing Gonzaga, right? They would take all that money and viewership. Now who's watching the West Coast Conference? And I think that's a huge concern. So in my opinion, they're going to end up somewhere. They're going to end up in a rebuilt ACC, which we didn't get to talk about, or they're going to be in the Big 12. But I do believe eventually they're going to end up in one of those 2 conferences.
No, that makes sense. That does make
sense. The brand is just too big.
Yeah.
To be left out, the brand is just too big. And I would say all the people that have been hanging on Gonzaga, and again, we've tracked Gonzaga since last summer. The problem with Gonzaga is they haven't won anything. They've never won the whole thing, right? They've never won the tournament. They've been very, very good for 15 years, but they can't win the entire tournament. So where do they rate? Carolina or UConn's got 6 championships.
Oh, wow.
Gonzaga has none.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that's the difference in brand value. I'm not saying Gonzaga's not worth something, but they are not equal. Gonzaga and UConn value-wise, not even close to being equal.
Yeah. Doesn't sound like it.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to get to some follow-up questions here. I appreciate everybody being here. Let's do a quick reset. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you follow both me and Amelia on Twitter. Turn on your notifications when so you'll know when our shows are on. You got to follow us on Twitter and on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube. Give us a thumbs up for all those people that are out there. If you like what we're doing, this is a fantastic interview tonight. And by the way, Amelia, at the very beginning of this, people were tracking your comments. You got a bunch of great shout outs that we're going to see here in a minute. So you should pat yourself on the back. You did a great job.
Thank you.
Yes, you bet.
Good.
Well, I would pat you on the back, but I'm way over here. But you did a great job, and he was a great interviewee. Lots of information. We really appreciate everybody for being here and doing that. I want to encourage everybody to sign up and become a member. Quickly, let me tell everybody what membership get your privileges here. If you become a member, you have access to all of our member videos, and there is a plethora of videos. Let me share this really quick, just so everybody knows. I was referencing several times in the membership area, we have one video that answers UConn to the Big 12. Syracuse or UConn to the Big 12. Where in the heck did that video go? Did they release it? Oh my gosh, maybe they put it out in the wild. Maybe it's out there. Well, either way, it was a membership video. Maybe it's a free one. UConn or Syracuse, which is the one that's more valued to the Big 12 or more valuable at all in general. And these are all videos you get. Right now, we're sitting on a Carolina, the SEC, question mark. Clemson, the SEC, question mark. Florida State, Amelia, to the SEC. Kansas. So we have gone through these, and I'm not kidding. You know, a lot of creators on YouTube say we spend so much time and we do these member things. We're talking maybe hundreds of hours that have gone into these videos from Wild Ute.
Oh, wow.
They are amazing. The quality. If you're not a member, I would just encourage you sign up. It's cheap for 1 month. Go through and then send me a DM on Twitter. And I'm challenging somebody to tell me these videos aren't the best you've seen on YouTube. I still haven't had anybody take me up on that. If there's something that we've done that you guys think somebody's done better, I want to know about it. Anyway, all right, let's get to questions. Let's go right here. Let's start with this one for you from Illini Ted, Amelia. Let's see. What is the general consensus of Nole fans for getting out of the ACC after this slow start?
I think that it's questionable at this point. There's been a lot of, trolling and hate about like, oh, well, there's no way in hell that, SEC, Big 10 or Big 12, wants Florida State now. And I still think that it's like, wait, after 2 games, yeah, do we look really, really rough? Yeah. But I don't think that necessarily changes par for the course. But I do wonder if like this whole lawsuit situation and everything else like had maybe skewed some attention from coaching staff, from even players, as far as focusing completely on the sport because of all the drama that's been going on with this lawsuit. I kind of scratched my head. I'm like, I wonder if that affected anything as to what we're seeing right now, or if it played any role at all. With all the social media out there and a lot of the, trolling and crap talk that you see, I think it's hard for players, especially if it's something that's not in their control, like this lawsuit.
Yeah, it is extremely difficult. So we have as a team have tried to educate ACC people. The comparison between what's going on with the ACC and what happened with the Pac-12, I will just say this: the seasons are mirroring each other. In 2022, the Pac-12 had arguably one of their worst seasons ever. One of the worst, top to bottom. Utah won the conference, but it was a down conference. Really, really bad when you compare against the other leagues. And what happens the next year? They blow up, right? Now what's happening with the ACC? Everything's topsy-turvy. The ACC is having arguably one of the worst. You got great, Georgia Tech's leading right now or whatever, but you need banner flagship. You need Florida State to be good. You need Clemson to be good. You need Miami to be good. You need Louisville to be good. You need Virginia Tech to be good. And if you're not, these TV people are watching this. ESPN is watching the ACC and saying, what the hell are we paying for? Right?
Exactly.
And if you lose Florida State, if you lose Clemson, we'll just say those 2 schools, you lose close to 35 to 40% off the top of what your value is.
Yep. Absolutely. But I mean, I still see, I don't think that this is going to make FSU waver from where they're.
No, not you guys are all in. I don't think so either.
Yeah.
No. If they wanted to settle, they would have settled during the summer.
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody's out there paying lawyers just to pay lawyers. Florida State and Clemson secondarily, but Florida State's playing chicken with the ACC. They're saying, call our bluff.
Right.
Re-up the ACC contract knowing that we're leaving. We dare you to do that. That's what's going on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But, like I said, I don't know if you see a lot of, fans from other teams like, oh, well, this is karma for FSU and everything that they've been involved with. And, all this, whining and griping about, and this is what happens, y'all. And it's just like, that's why I wonder if it did play any kind of role to like skew the attention from the team and where they were trying to go this year, to what we're seeing right now.
Agreed. Sorry, I was sending a message really quick. Let's get to a few more comments. By the way, the way we do the comments, if you're new to the show, I do membership comments first, super chats always. They get first priority. New membership comments and memberships are very important around here. They also get priority. And then, of course, just general people, anybody can leave a comment. I've tried to flag as many as I can. I'll probably miss a bunch of good ones, but I've done the best I can, okay? So that's how this works. You want to get your voice out there, make it a super chat. That's the bottom line. I'm going to start with Steve, who's a fan of Amelia. Steve, Ohio, Florida, says Big 12 members want to wait and see what happens in the ACC. I agree with that. Before making a decision on UConn. In my opinion, there is no rush to get UConn. UConn will be there no matter what happens. UConn's not going anywhere. The Big 10 and the SEC is not picking up UConn. So I agree, there is no rush. I believe that Brett Yormark tried to rush it through, but it's not because political forces or money forces wanted to get it done. No, that's not the reason that happened. Happened because somebody leaked some information and it sort of blew it up. Troll grinding, cheek clapper. Boy, you got to become a member again, man. I love seeing your name in green. As a West Coast person, UConn is definitely one of the first teams you hear about that's east of the Mississippi. Learn they got some feisty fans too. Yes, they do. I can attest to that personally. I paid a price with them on Twitter a little bit, so I can definitely attest to that. Joaquin Morales, one of our OG members, great supporter, and has been a member in the past. Thank you, Joaquin. Also an Arizona State fan. They blew out. I can't even remember who they played last week. Absolutely blew the doors off them. Arizona State might be better than people think, including me. Hey, Bomber and College Football Mafia family, don't forget to smash that like button. It's free. It is free. Yep, it is. Stephen Vitt says, I believe UConn has potential to become a decent, respectable football program if they invest enough. I want the football Huskies to make it. How much money do you think they need to invest in a period? We're going to say that 6-year period that we've talked about, 2026 to 2031. How much money each year do you think it's going to take to turn that program around?
Are you asking me?
Yep.
Is the football program around?
Yes.
If we're not talking about building a new stadium.
Right. Right. Good point.
20 million.
Okay.
I'm just kind of pulling that number out of my butt, to be honest. But
no, that may be it. Boosters have to make up. They do all kinds of raising capital, maybe private equity. Who knows?
But from what I gather, UConn is kind of self-reliant in like where their financing is coming from now.
Well, they're subsidized by the state.
Okay.
And honestly, to be honest, UConn is way over budget. There you are.
Sorry,
I believe
I had to get
you're fine. Oh, we lost her. Come back. Just so everybody knows, I think UConn is indebted to the state. I think they're subsidizing them a little bit. That's something we didn't get to mark. I might have that wrong. I'm willing to admit I got that wrong if somebody wants to correct me.
Sorry,
you there?
Guys. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm having technical difficulties. I had to get my phone on a charger, and now it won't sit up straight.
It's okay. Let's see here. Illini Ted says if UConn leaves Fox, we'll have some replacements lined up quickly. I'm sure they already do. I can easily see SLU and Dayton as options. I don't know who SLU is. Is that No, that's not St. John's. Do you know who SLU is?
St. Louis? No.
Oh, maybe. Yeah, it might be St. Louis University. Yep, that's a good. Yeah, and that would be regional too, because Creighton's in the middle there too. So, yeah, that's possible. I know these guys have been planning people leaving for decades. It won't. Nobody will be stunned if somebody leaves. They'll have alternates on alternates. St. Louis. Our web says it's St. Louis. Good job. Tom Dubé says the Big East valuation is dragged down by small private schools without large fan bases, without national reach of a UConn or a Villanova. So I think they're getting $7 million a year each school now with that new Big East agreement. That's not a lot of money.
No.
It's not a lot of money.
Is that spread out amongst like all of their?
It is. Yeah, that's for each
programs?
school. And then their tournament credits are paid out disproportionately, I believe.
Okay.
Kind of like Gonzaga. Gonzaga gets more money from the ACC, West Coast Conference.
Okay.
Earl Carr, one of my first signups, one of my first members. 14 months, Earl. You are an absolute stud. Thank you so much, Earl. I tip my hat to you. Thank you for being here. Super loyal. We appreciate it. And that's my favorite Husky helmet. Sorry, Cougar helmet. Grant, great to see you, Amelia. Tough a couple games for you and Knoll Nation. And thank you for the follow on X. So there you go.
There you go. Thank you.
I love it. Illini Ted again. You can't force ACC teams into the Big East. They don't have football. The whole reason there's a Big East now, or how it is now, is because they kicked the football schools out and formed the AAC.
Okay.
So a little history lesson there.
Okay.
Let's see. Troll grinding cheek clapper again. One positive about Big 12 is when I think of Big 12, I generally think okay to good in football and great in basketball. Big 10 and SEC, I mainly just think football. Would you agree with that perception?
Yes. Yes. I mean, I think in general, not just with Big 10 and SEC, but I mean, football is the front runner over basketball in pretty much any facet. When you even like pro, college, it just trumps. It just trumps basketball in general. No matter how awesome your program may be, I think that basketball will always like take the cake. But
I agree with you 100%. I think you're exactly right. I'm going to put out so we're putting up a flare, 15 minutes. That's all we got. So if you want to be part of the show, for certain, because I've got way more comments than I'm going to get to, make it a super chat and I'll get it to you. That way everybody can see what you're thinking. I'm going to have to jump back for a few of these because there was a bunch I got from earlier. Tempest checks in using my name, which is always a cheat way to get your comment read. Bomber, I hope you're feeling better and hope the Cougars beat those Mustangs. Yes, BYU over SMU. You should be cheering that. You should be a BYU fan this weekend.
Are you talking to me or him?
I'm talking to you.
All
Florida
right.
State, you guys want SMU to lose. So you got to be cheering for BYU. That's all I'm saying.
I will be doing that.
Okay. All right. And we're going to beat SMU in Dallas. That's the idea. I am feeling better, Tempest. If you missed it at the beginning of the show, I do have more stuff I'm going to have to do in the future, more surgery and stuff. But right now I'm feeling good. So thank you for asking. I appreciate your support. Timothy Green says, Bomber, I have a question for you. Do you think Connecticut should be in the Big 12? Personally, I want ACC schools first. Would you pick UConn or would you wait for ACC schools?
Wait for ACC schools for sure. Because, if you fill the slot with UConn, I mean, are you going to kick yourself in the butt if, that
yes.
spot now can't have Virginia Tech come in or something along those lines? So I don't know how long you wait to see what happens with the ACC. I don't know, like, if there's like a timestamp on that.
Again, what's the rush to pick up UConn today? I don't see a rush.
I don't see the rush either. I see the rush maybe for them. But
absolutely. Yes. Well. And I think Brett Yormark has ADD. And I think he constantly needs to add new. Last year, he got 4 schools from the Big 12, killed the Pac-12. This year, he hasn't picked anybody up, and I think he's got ADD, and he needs that feedback. I'm just teasing.
I need something to do. I gotta switch it up.
I'm just teasing. I don't think Brett Yormark. I don't think Brett Yormark has ADD. All right. Greg Nelson. I laughed when I saw this. Greg Nelson says Bob Thompson schmompson. That's ridiculous. You get Fox the big games on previously unused holiday weekends. This compensation will cover it. To think Yormark hasn't foreseen this is idiotic. I don't think any of us have said he didn't. Did you say that? I didn't say that. Okay. Yeah, I didn't think so. I think Brett Yormark has gamed this out. Probably the day he started, he already knew what he wanted to do. That's my guess. Clint Moses checks in again. If UConn can fill 40,000 seat stadium and pull in 2 million views for football, then add them until then, it's all potential. You're exactly right, Clint. And we've said that over and over now. There is no reason to bring in UConn this second.
How big is their stadium?
It's about 40,000.
Oh, okay. And
yeah,
so
35 to 40.
Why is it far away because it's connected with something else, or is that their stadium? They just happen to build it kind of far away.
They rent it.
Oh,
They
okay.
rent the stadium. I don't know who owns it. I don't know anything about the stadium itself. Their facilities around football are fantastic. The locker room, the training, top notch. It's just they don't have a stadium on campus. Miami doesn't have a stadium on campus either, so it's not the only school that has that. But that stadium, BYU played there a few years ago, and it's, I don't know, it feels like a high school stadium, to be honest. Like SMU stadium, you're going to see. You guys play SMU, right?
Yeah.
It's not a very big one, so they should be filling it every year.
I went to Valdosta State for a couple of years before Florida State, and
okay.
And actually, this was when Valdosta State was like winning national championships, but they didn't have their own stadium. They shared with like the local high school, and it was just it was kind of funny just going to games. It just felt silly, as big as well as they were doing, and then that stadium was just like the bare bones minimum bleachers, like old school, 1970s high school football stadium.
Yep, and they're out there. There's more of them. That's not the only one. Not knocking UConn Stadium. I don't want to get messages on Twitter saying that we're making fun of UConn State. We're not. All we're saying is they're a half hour away from their main campus, so it's off campus, and they rent the facility. You can't argue with facts. Anyway, I know I'm going to get the tweets anyway. I'm still going to get the DMs saying you hate UConn. And infamous front runner says, are we sure Texas isn't jamming this up somehow? Well, Texas is in the SEC. I have no idea how Texas could jam it up. Can you think of any way Texas could?
I'm missing some context as to what he's asking.
Yeah, I don't either. I don't know. We'll just pass that by. I'm not sure what that means. Keep chopping. Good to have you here, man. UConn football can be just as good as schools like Houston and Cincy. Yes, they can. They've done it. The potential's there, but that word potential is scary. Not everybody's putting the money in to realize that potential, right?
A big gamble.
It is. You are. That's why I think a contract right now with UConn separating basketball and football would work. It's because you're not doing football unless they meet all of these criteria.
Right.
So, in my opinion, as long as they don't lose money and they can subsidize each of these schools out west for travel costs, I think they could bring on UConn anytime. I just don't see a reason to do it today.
Yeah.
Jeff Woodworth says it's impossible to know what UConn football is with them being independent right now. That's true. Yeah, that's true. Chris E says FSU and academic don't go together. Oh, Amelia, shots fired.
I would say that was maybe true 10, 20 years ago. But I mean, I really think that FSU has stepped it up as far as their academia is concerned, and the prestige that they're gaining with that. So I don't know. I think that I don't think it's the same school that it was some years ago as far as academics are concerned, if that's what he's trying to imply.
Very fair. Yep, I think it's very fair. We are on 10-minute countdown. 10 minutes is all we have left, people. You want your comment to be read, make it a super chat. Mr. Ed Wayner, another one of our OG members. Good to have you here, Ed. Great guest. Ask Mark how hard it has been for UConn to schedule football as an independent. I don't have to ask him because BYU had to do the same thing for 12 years. It's extremely difficult. What upside does Mark see in Connecticut and New England. There's a huge upside. I can answer that one as well. Wild Ute did a demographics and DMA look and break down about UConn, and they're near the top if they were in the Big 12. The DMA and the reach that they have in the Northeast is extremely large. It's huge.
Yeah.
Tons of money up there. So anyway, and then the third question is, did BC keep UConn out of the ACC? Do you know the answer to that? I don't know the answer to that one.
I don't either. I really don't.
Okay. Sorry, Ed. Couldn't get to your third one. I apologize. I'm not as up on the history of the Big East and all that falling apart. I watched it happen, but I don't know much about the details. Village Idiot, there's a name. Good to have you, Village Idiot. Northwestern is building a new $800 million stadium. Yes, they are. All private funded. Yes, they are. UConn needs to show the same commitment to football. The difference is, Village Idiot, Northwestern's getting $70 million a year from the Big Ten. $70 million. They might have funded it with $800 million of private money, but that just meant they didn't need to ask boosters to support their other programs because they're getting $70 million in TV revenue from the Big Ten. It's easy to get donations to build a stadium if your donations don't have to go to the operations of your program. So it's true. Everything you're saying is true, but all things are not equal. Right. And that's why FSU wants in one of these bigger conferences, right? You want that money.
Yeah, exactly. And, I think that that's going to play, a true story for Clemson and FSU. Even as bad as the season has started off to be, and a lot of people will argue differently, but I think that, the FSU's following and their brand, even when they're terrible, is still enough to pull in a bigger paycheck in the end.
I think something gets settled in the next 2 years, or a judgment. Something happens in the next 2 years for Florida State and Clemson. You guys either join the Big 12 for just a cup of coffee. You run an independent schedule for a few years, but by 2030, 31, which everybody's now pointing to, for all the conferences, 2030, 31 is huge. I think Florida State ends up in either the Big Ten or the SEC. I would be shocked if that doesn't happen.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah. Let's see here. I'll keep marking and going. Marcus Williams. Who do you think is better right now, the Big or the SEC? Who do you think's better?
An unbiased opinion.
Well, you're a third party just like I am.
Yeah, I can't stand the SEC, so I'm going to say Big Ten.
Okay. All right. That's very fair. I appreciate it. I am going to say between the two, if we're talking football right now, this second, there's nobody better than Georgia.
Yeah, that's
But
true.
that's one school in the conference. If I was to take a conference on the whole, I would take the Big Ten today. I think there's better teams overall in the Big Ten between those two.
I think there's a level of class with the Big Ten that isn't really there with the SEC.
Yeah, well, I mean, the SEC, they were 1-3 this last weekend with non-conference P4 games, and that's not good.
No, that's not.
But Georgia is just so much better than everybody else.
Oh yeah, I mean, I remember when the days when Florida Georgia game. I was living in Jacksonville for the years that they would just
I remember those games
to Florida. It
yes,
was always a beat down.
Yep.
So I mean, I know that they've always been a strong program, but they had their rough seasons too. The Bulldogs are a powerhouse now, but they definitely had their rough seasons.
So this last 10 years, 12 years, the rise and fall of Florida State, Clemson, now Georgia and Alabama, those four brands in the last decade and a half, I'm starting to see a turnaround. I think Nebraska is on its way back. I think USC, against my better judgment, USC is on its way back. And who knows what you're going to get with Oregon, right? So yeah. I think there's teams coming in the hunt, and the level of football being played right now is so much better than it was 20 years ago. That's across the board.
Very true.
Another super chat from Earl Carr. Thank you so much, Earl. And thank you very much for your loyalty and being a member as well. Hey, Amelia and Bomber, are you excited for the first weekend of NFL football? Well, sure I am. Do you have an NFL team?
I do. I'm a Carolina fan. I was living in Charlotte when they became a team, so it's one of those things where not too many people can say that they have been a fan of their NFL team since day one. And I've seen that team have its major highs and lows, and right now we are in a very major slump. So when Florida State was doing so well, I'm like, well, at least my college team's doing well, because Carolina's like the worst team in the NFL right now.
Yeah.
There's no question about it. I mean, they're like worse than the Browns, which the Browns have actually started to come back up. And I'm partial to the Lions because my dad's from Detroit, so I like seeing them becoming a stronger team for sure.
I'm a Seahawks fan.
Nice.
Said, not a fan of anybody else. I'm a Seahawks fan. Various black and white. College, I have 2 or 3 teams, but in the NFL, it's all Seattle. I don't know. Sorry, say that again.
How did you become a Seattle fan?
Oh, I'm from Washington.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's where I grew up, and been to many Seahawks games. I went to the 2 NFC championship games. 2 of the 3 before they wanted to go to the Super Bowl. And yeah, you can't get that blue and green out of my head. Anyway, yeah. Earl, thank you so much for the super chat. I really appreciate it. We have 5-minute countdown. Just buyer beware. Everybody knows. If you want your comment to be read, make it a super chat. All right, let's go to a few last year. Doc Gibbs, who we love, coming in and always asking insightful questions, making good comments, never agreeing with us. FSU has burned SEC bridge. While Sankey is SEC commissioner, I'd be shocked at an SEC invite. So how long I guess the question is is Sankey an SEC commissioner in 2030-31?
I just, it's not going to be any skin off my nose if the SEC doesn't happen. I mean, honestly, I've never been a fan of us. I mean, it just seems like we'd be jumping from the flame into the fire. It would just be we'd be treated the same. Definitely be treated as one of their bottom tier teams, which probably starting out that may be true, but I feel like it would be a harder struggle just given the history and the drama between SEC and ACC, and especially with FSU and ESPN and the snub. And, I mean, the list goes on and on. I would prefer to see them in Big 10 or even Big 12 over SEC, honestly, but it all comes down to money. In the end, it just comes down to the money.
I in January said and maybe even in December, I thought they were destined to the Big 10 right away.
That's what I thought too.
I think the time that has lapsed, the 8 months that has lapsed, has not been kind to Florida State. I think their boosters have pissed some people off. I think they've made not a lot of friends in something these are clubs at the end of the day. These conferences are clubs. And Florida State was the guy basically beating on the door wanting in, and they've turned a lot of people off. That's my perception.
Yeah.
I think it's frustrated a lot of Florida State people.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree for sure.
Yeah, great observations, Doc. I think more than likely we both agree with that. MH5 says KU is putting $450 million in its first phase of stadium construction. Yes, that stadium's under construction now. They're playing their home games, I think, in Kansas City. They are basketball schools showing commitment to football. Brett Yormark came out at Arizona in the spring and said the Big 12 is a football conference, football first. And why is that? 80% of the money goes to football, 20 goes for basketball. Pretty simple math, right? I mean, it's not real difficult to understand that.
Yeah, can't argue with those numbers.
What's funny is people do. I'm just saying, it sounds silly, but people do argue with those. All right, we got a couple more minutes here. Let's see. Let's get to this one. Stephen Vitt says the only follow-up question I asked Martin and other UConn fans is, if the Big 12 ACC don't bring UConn in, what are the alternatives? Is there a middle ground UConn can find to make football work? I cannot see a middle ground. What do you think?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so.
it's pretty hard to do both, be master of both things, right?
Yeah, I think that you become like mediocre at both at some point.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I think that's right. All right. Well, that is our time, guys. Thank you so much for everybody who's been here tonight with us. Amelia, tell everybody a little bit about yourself. Let them know kind of what you're doing and how we're building this for you right now.
Well, last season I had an idea for an all-female hosted, Seminole focused, YouTube channel, content creation, called the Feminine. And now that I've been speaking with Bomber about my project, because I reached out to him last year, and then I had some family stuff come up throughout the off season that kind of derailed my focus on the project. But once I was able to kind of dedicate some time back to it, I reached back out to Bomber, and he was nothing but encouraging and supportive and awesome about it, and gave me a lot of great ideas that I think that, because, you know, even when I would put out feelers for other FSU ladies, and I know that they're out there for sure, I think that making it a broader spectrum of a project and covering all of college football, or at least like all of like the bigger teams, would be an easier way to find other women that would be interested in collaborating in the project. You know, have a gal from Alabama, have a Notre Dame, you know. Like,
Yes, absolutely. Yep, and I'm here for it. I'm going to do everything I can to help her get that started. And I would encourage, if you're a female out there right watching this live or later, reach out to Amelia or send me a DM on Twitter and let's get together. Let's have conversations. That's how all of this stuff starts. How hard was it for you to boot up tonight, Amelia?
It was easier than I thought it would be.
There we go.
I was
There we
nervous
go.
this afternoon, but I think that like the older you get, the more you're just like, you know,
What the hell cares? Yeah.
And then once it started, I started having so much fun that I wasn't nervous at all anymore. Like, I'm having a blast, and that's all that matters.
Well, everybody, I encourage you to reach out to her on Twitter, say hi, follow her, and let's get this thing started. You have to start somewhere, build a brand up, and that's certainly what we're trying to do. So I encourage everybody to do that. We'll have Amelia back on as many shows as she wants. It's her schedule, not mine. But she did a great job tonight, and I'm really proud of you tonight. I hope you feel like you had fun. That's always what I ask guests. Did you have fun?
I had a blast. Thank you so much for having me on tonight. I really, this makes me excited. I feel more confident about it. And yeah, I had an absolute blast. Thank you so much.
No, you're very, very welcome. Stick around. Don't go anywhere. I'm going to turn the music on when we sign off, and then you and I can talk afterward. Okay.
Yeah, sounds great.
All right. Awesome. I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. 75 people watching us live. This show was ad hoc. Not a lot of, advertising done about it this evening. Our next show is Friday night. It's the big freaking Friday show. It's our roll into the weekend for college football. We encourage everybody to be here with us at 7 p.m. Eastern on Friday night. Maybe I can convince Amelia to make a visit. And we do this as a team here, the College Football Mafia Network, and we appreciate all of you being here. The loyalty you've shown for us, the growth that we've had in a year and a half has been extraordinary. Certainly, me as a project starting this 18 months ago, I'm beside myself for how much support we've received, and I really, really appreciate that. Make sure you subscribe to the show tonight. Follow us both on Twitter. Turn on your notifications on Twitter and YouTube so you know when we post and you know when we're putting information out there, so you're never behind. And then last but not least, consider becoming a member. It really helps us, keeps the light on, and you guys have access to all those library private videos. So we really appreciate it. Have a great night, and stay out of trouble, will you? We'll see you on Friday night.
Thanks,
Peace
guys.
out. See ya.